Hello everybody and welcome back to the Data Playbook. So as mentioned in a previous video, I'm going to go through the games pretty quickly here for the Sunday games. If you need more information or want to look at the details, you're welcome to pause and zoom in to any of the information. But otherwise, I'm just going to try to get through it pretty quickly. So let's get into it. Getting into our next game, you have the Raiders at Kansas City, with Kansas City heavily favored on the money line, with a spread of 11.5 and a total line of 45.5. Here you have Kansas City with one of the best in the league for their average fantasy points, and the Raiders are one of the worst in the league. Here are the averages if you need them. Just make a pause and zoom into anything that might be useful for you here. And for your quarterbacks, you have Geno Smith for Vegas and Patrick Mahomes for Kansas City. Mahomes averaging almost 25 fantasy points per game, while Geno Smith only averages a little less than 12 fantasy points per game. He does have 10 passing interceptions this season with 18 sacks suffered. Mahomes only has 2 interceptions with 10 sacks suffered. You just had the totals there, so if you need to look at those, go ahead and pause and go back. Otherwise, here's your averages. Maybe an interesting note here real fast is that Mahomes only has 1 week under 200 passing yards with 187. And Geno Smith almost trying to do the same, except for he's at a few weeks, his worst being 117. And here are your running backs for this matchup. JT getting 15.2 PPR on average per game, so that's not too bad. He does have 1 turnover this season. And if we look at the averages, here's what you get, along with their week-by-week breakdown, if you need any of that information. So looking at the number 1 wide receivers, this is what you get, except for that Rashid Rice is actually back this week. I don't have him here because I actually have no data for him, which makes sense since he's just getting back. There's nothing to show, but it also happens to break the tool, so I'm going to have to go fix that. But there's no point in showing him anyway, so I just moved on to Worthy, who's now listed as the second wide receiver, to compare with Jacoby. I'd say there's nothing exceptional about this, only 10 PPR for both of them, pretty close, a little bit more for Jacoby. And then if you need the breakdown and the averages, here you go. I think the only thing to note is that Jacoby Myers does get a little less than 28.2% of the receiving yards on the team, which does appear to be the largest share of anybody else, where Xavier Worthy gets actually a much smaller percentage. The whole team does share a lot, but he most definitely is not the largest share of receiving on the team. And here's your second receiver. I was going to show Hollywood Brown, but he also is not working for some reason, so I'm going to have to look into that. But I will show you this, since this is all I have. An average of 14.4 fantasy points per game, so that's not too bad for the receiver here. Looking at the averages, this is what you get. And the breakdowns down here, with Jacoby getting almost 23.8% of the receiving share. And then finally here you have the tight ends. I'm showing Michael Mayer instead because Brock Bowers is still listed as out, or at least doubtful. So keep an eye on that as we get closer to the game. You get a pretty good fantasy average here of 12 PPR for Travis Kelce. And otherwise, here's all your breakdowns and your averages. Obviously, these guys get a little bit smaller share of receiving yards, with Myers getting very small of a share, but kind of being a backup, that's what you expect. With Kelce, that looks even less than 15%, which is a little less than average for tight ends. So with that, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed and got something out of it. If you did, leave a like and subscribe. If there's more you want to see, leave a comment on what I can do better. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching.